Call to order the East Bank Stadium Committee. It's Monday, November 7 at 4:30. We've got about a handful and a half of council members in the audience, and I know more are watching on TV. The first item on the agenda is just a quick reminder of, I know I sound like a broken record to y'all, but our next meeting is in 2 days on November 9. I think that one's at 5:30. It's at 5:30, not 4:30, 5:30, not 4:30. If you get here early, you're going to see the ARP committee meeting. And the full list of meetings is on the East Bank Stadium Committee's website, as well as all the presentations from all the meetings we've had. The presentation we're going to see today will be up on the committee website tomorrow morning. We've got the information organized by both meeting day and by subject matter, so hopefully you can find stuff pretty easily. And a reminder to council members, you can submit questions you have about anything stadium related to Danielle Godin in the council office, and about once a week the council office is going to send questions over to the mayor's office. I understand the first batch made it over to them last week, and Mr. Jameson tells me that closed business tomorrow or the next day, the first round of questions will have answers and we'll get them up online. So with that, I will move to the main business of the day, which is a presentation from Venue Solutions Group. And we've got Mr. Russ Simons from VSG here to give us a presentation. Go ahead, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, council members. Pleasure to be in front of you today. What we're about to discuss is not something that comes up in front of you every day, so it is a complex issue, and we're going to try to bring some clarity to some of the questions that you have as we go forward. I want to begin with just a quick review of the process to select this team. It was a challenge, as you might expect. There's a great deal of attention focused in Nashville on a regular day, let alone in a conversation with regard to a renovation of a stadium or a new stadium. In addition, in order to have the integrity of an independent group, it was important that we find people that had the commensurate professional qualifications, but that were not really tied to the Titans in any given way. And so the group that I will be outlining for you here briefly meets those criteria. They have enormous industry experience and acumen, and are completely independent in their review of the subject matter. Venue Solutions Group is Nashville-based. Our actual office is in Franklin. I live in Nashville, and I'm one of your tax-paying citizens, proud to be part of Nashville for the past 32 years. I'm not going to actually read bullet points. You can read 6 times faster than I can speak. The cogent part of this is from the NFL client list that you see for Venue Solutions Group. We've worked in 26 of 30 NFL stadiums in a variety of capacities. That's my brief background. Important for you to note that that I was the former GM of the Bridgestone Arena, and I was Tom Druffel's son's soccer coach. Hello, Tom. Joining me today is one of my business partners, Mike Woolley. Mike Woolley really leads our facility condition assessment practice, and as you can see by the numbers on the screen, VSG is the industry leader in providing this kind of information to professional sports teams, communities, not only domestically in the U.S., but around the world. Also a part of our project team was Legends Project Development. And in the fine print in italics, you'll see that Legends Project Development has over $30 billion worth of development experience. When you look at this company and the wide variety of things that they do, we were very fortunate to be able to include them on our team. And representing Legends Project Development is Paula Parts, the Chief Operating Officer of Paula. And she has 27 years of experience in our industry and over $7 billion worth of sports and entertainment related projects. Also joining our team is Manhattan Construction, probably best known in the NFL for the construction of the Dallas Cowboys AT&T Stadium, but also NRG Stadium, worked on the Raymond James Stadium. The Star, if you're not familiar, is a mixed-use development that houses the practice facility for the Dallas Cowboys, as well as retail, residential, commercial, and hotel properties. And then also Kyle Field, which I also worked on, which at the time was the largest renovation project in sports. It would equate today in 2023 dollars to about $750 million in 2 phases. Jonathan Collins is here representing Manhattan. You can see he has 24 years of experience in the construction industry, specifically in the project management and in the cost estimating. And so a very important piece of this puzzle. We also engaged some specialty consultants. I'll explain their roles as we go a little bit further. Henderson Engineers for MEP, Thornton Tomasetti for structural, Idibri for technology and low voltage, and VDA, which is, I think, the industry leader in vertical transportation, escalators, and elevators. Just all in all, this group comprises of 118 NFL projects, and you can see the breakout on the slide that's in front of you. So our scope of work. The evaluation of cost to comply with the existing lease. So our job was to independently evaluate the projected cost to meet the first class or comparable facilities standard under the current Titans lease with Nissan Stadium. We provide a high-level comparison of improvements and relative costs for comparable NFL facilities listed in the existing lease. In addition to that, we conducted a limited facility condition assessment. A facility condition assessment is really a moment in time where we benchmark the equipment and systems in these categories. It is structural, MEP, vertical transportation, and technology. A part of our scope was to be able to inform Metro of what the cost impositions would be from 2002 until 2026. This would be a period of time between either a renovation being executed or a new building coming online, and we will again delve into that a little bit farther as we go through the presentation. Just to highlight the requirements under the existing lease. The existing lease requires the Metropolitan Sports Authority to fund all capital expenditures necessary to keep the stadium in a first-class condition. And as I have already done, we are relating first-class condition to comparable facility standards. Includes the level of improvements and new technology from time to time found in a reasonable number of comparable facilities. And comparable facilities in the lease means the comparable professional sports facility of a similar age, with specific examples in the NFL and the NBA, or Major League Baseball, NFL stadiums in Charlotte, Jacksonville, Miami, Major League Baseball in Denver, NFL in Cleveland, among others that are listed. In addition, in the comparable facilities clause in the lease, it also accounts for any similar type of facility that was built 10 years before or 10 years after Nissan Stadium. And so that set of facilities for the NFL is approximately 17 buildings.
What, not, just to stop you there, it doesn't say all 17 buildings, right? It talks about the average or the mean or the standard of them. It doesn't say you have to meet every single one of the 17 buildings.
It's my belief that the comparative set is the 17 buildings. I'm gonna break that down into one that we chose to focus on because of its compatibility with the Titans master plan development.
All right, I just wanted to be clear. It's not, the lease doesn't say we have to match all 17 facilities, right? Right?
Okay, right.
Do you agree with that? Well, hold on a second. You told us that you were hired to compare it to the existing lease. Did you do the comparing to the existing lease, or did Mr. Cross?
No, I'm sorry. We examined the 17 comparable facilities. Within that group of facilities, we focused on Hard Rock Stadium in Miami because it was the latest renovation, and that renovation was the most like the proposed renovation components from the Titans Ginsler Hastings plan.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm pausing here because, I mean, you're quoted in the media last Friday saying that you're not qualified, that your firm's not qualified to determine what constitutes first-class condition under the lease, and so I'm a little confused by the presentation today compared to the quote in the scene on Friday.
Certainly. The quote in the scene, what I was responding to in the quote in the scene and also in the Tennessean, the way the question was asked, I interpreted that I was being asked to create a legal definition for first class, and I do not believe I'm qualified to be able to give you the definition of first class, particularly how it's used in your lease. What I am qualified to do is to look at comparable facilities and to be able to tell you, as we will today, how a comparable facilities within that set actually match up with the proposed renovation plan that the Titans engaged with Ginsler Hastings.
Well, let me just read you 2 sentences out of that scene story. Tell me whether you think the reporting is accurate. It says, council members hope to rely on the study as an assessment of the city's minimum obligation under the current lease. And you're quoted as saying, we're not qualified to make that determination.
Again, I interpreted that as them asking me to actually make an opinion about what the legal definition of first class is, and I do not feel qualified to that. I did, with the scene, attempt to explain the comparable facilities angle. It may not have made it into the story.
Would you mind going back 1 slide? So evaluating the cost to comply with existing lease, that wasn't within your scope of work?
We evaluated the costs of the Ginsler Hastings master plan against comparable facilities, and we focused on one facility in particular.
All right, so in particular, that top line in bold, evaluating the cost of complying with the existing lease, I understand you to be saying that was not within the scope of your work because you were focused on.
As it relates to comparable facilities, it is in our scope of work and it is in our report.
So you're reaching conclusions about the cost of complying with the existing lease?
I'm reaching conclusions about the cost of the Metro's cost if they were to execute the Ginsler Hastings plan.
All right, and you're not making a determination about the cost to comply with the existing lease, are you?
No.
All right.
I don't believe so.
I'm sorry to interrupt, and I prompted a couple other hands to come up. Do you guys still have questions? I saw Councilmember Porterfield first.
I'll hold my question now. You covered a couple of things I was wondering, so I'll hold my other question to the end.
All right, and Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. You quoted a part of the lease that it says a reasonable number of comparable facilities, and this isn't a question, it's more of a statement, because that definition of first-class condition continues on, and Part C says shall be limited to the level of improvements in new technology that at the time in question have been successfully implemented in a majority of comparable facilities. In my view, majority means 50% plus one. So I understand what you're saying. You used a design concept and you quoted that design concept, and you're not doing that. You're not necessarily looking at complying with the existing lease. I just want to make it clear that there may have been some things in that design concept that are over and above what the lease actually obligates us to. Would you agree with that?
I think that your question, I think, will be addressed in more detail. So if I might ask to put a pin in that.
Sure.
Until we get through the remainder of the presentation that deals with that, and then happy to circle back to it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else, or Councilman O'Connell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess that's, I think I may be following a little bit in the, along the lines of what the chair is asking. I feel like, to me, the value that may come from today's presentation or this review in general comes from trying to understand specifically whether, I guess, I will say one of the most common questions that I've gotten and that I have myself is really, what is Metro's obligation under the current lease? And I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. Like, I understand the the Gensler-Hastings master plan, which I have not personally seen. I don't know if anybody else in here has seen it. Who is, what, so nobody at Metro has it. So, I mean, one, I don't know what that master plan provides for. Two, I want to understand if that's really the only thing to assess against at this point. I mean, I think what we're trying to understand is what is actually the legal obligation, and I don't know if we're going to get close to an answer to that based on the opening here.
I think if again, I'd beg for some patience as we give you more information through the presentation, and it's appropriate to revisit that or any other questions as we continue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So as from a process standpoint, comparable NFL stadium, as I mentioned, we found the set of 17 comparable facilities under the provisions in the existing lease. In our professional opinion, that the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida was the closest comparative example because of the proposed components that they executed already, but the proposed components in the Gensler-Hastings master plan. Hard Rock Stadium is built in 1987. It's just outside the no, it's actually a named component in the comparable facilities part of the Titans lease. They've undergone a number of renovations throughout the years. Two major renovations, one of about $250 million, another one of about $550 million. And corrected for 2023 dollars, they have about a total of $1.3 billion worth of renovations in their facility. That's why that facility in particular led us to being the comparable source. And as we get to more in comparable facilities, we'll talk specifically about what some of those comparable items were. So in light of it's our professional judgment that a wholesale renovation of the current Nissan Stadium would be necessary in order to comply with the terms of the lease. Meaning that there are 17 buildings that they're not all the same, they're not all the same cadence, they're not all the same pace of money spending. But if you looked at all of the things that they've done, it would be hard for me to envision, in my professional opinion, how you could comply in a rational and reasonable way by renovating the stadium. I'll continue. The Titans master plan was commissioned by two very experienced architecture firms, Gensler, which is an internationally based firm, and Hastings, which is a local Nashville based firm, to produce a master plan for Nissan Stadium. So one of the things that really resonated with me was this plan was completed in early December of 21. That meant that the work that they did in the development of that plan was based on comparable facilities and also current industry standards. It meant that no discussion had taken place yet with regard to the possibility of a new stadium or a dome stadium. So it was pure from the standpoint that it represented what the Titans and these architectural firms felt was necessary to prepare the stadium to actually function in today's environment, but also for 20 plus years into the future. That gives me a lot of confidence so that there's not any cross-pollination or any situation where somebody was trying to manipulate that design or those numbers, because the first conversation that I'm aware of in our community took place in somewhere to mid to late April of this year about floating the idea of a new stadium or a covered stadium. And so the integrity of that plan stands alone for me, and that really inspired us to be able to use it as the comparative facility as we went forward.
I'm being asked to have you talk a little bit more into the mic.
Sorry, got it? What we learned in the facility condition assessment and what we learned in the pricing really supports my previous opinion about that I don't really feel like, from a professional standpoint, that a renovation will actually meet the definition of comparable facilities. However, that definition actually lands and what everybody agrees on. The Gensler-Hastings plan provided a reasonable basis for what would be required, again, in our professional opinion, a reasonable basis for what would be required to meet that standard today. On the costs and the process of the costs, the Metropolitan Sports Authority asked the Titans, we'd like you to know what it would take to, how much money would we spend if we were to renovate the building, extend the lease, and continue Metro's obligation through the end of the extended lease in 2030 and 2039. The Titans assembled a team of two high-quality firms, Turner Construction Company and AECOM Hunt, I think, and they did an analysis. That analysis was on a short fuse. They did not have a lot of time, and they didn't have the amount of time and or the resources that I had in putting our plan and our comparison together overall. It is, I call it ironic. You might feel differently about it. They announced $1.8 billion. You will be familiar with a memo that I sent to the mayor's office on the 13th of October, a progress report saying that right now, based on our preliminary findings, we thought that the comparison for the Ginsler plan was going to be in $1.75 billion to $1.95 billion. The irony is that we're in the same zip code. We got there in a very different way. They were forced because of time to engage in a lot of assumptions about both the costs of that, plus the extended costs to Metro under the terms of the current lease, that kind of thing. I had enough time to do the job correctly. I had the appropriate team with all of the sub-disciplines to make sure that we had the science that reinforced the number, and that science is what's in the report in front of you today. The methodology we utilized, it's as I think each of you would expect. We looked at using Manhattan's historical cost database. We looked at current pricing of similar facilities and projects. And if any of you are in the construction or construction-related businesses, you'd know that right now pricing and estimating is the wild, wild west. But these are the conditions that we face here today. And so we took a reasonable and rational approach to making sure that the assumptions that we used in our pricing effort reflected the conditions on the ground. Because even if you went for a renovation or you went for a new building, the ground conditions remain the same. We were able to use our 2017 facility condition assessment as a guide looking at what was recommended and the status of the stadium, the equipment, and the systems in 2017. We were able to look at what's been done in those areas and also what remains to be done and also what condition the facility is in the ensuing 6 years. We were able to review the Ginsler-Hastings conceptual design plan with Ginsler. We had every question answered. We were able to do a deep dive and then apply that to current and modern construction costs. We did, as I mentioned earlier, a limited facility condition assessment to evaluate the current condition of structural, MEP, vertical transportation, and technology. Again, we use those categories because those are generally the categories where the largest cost impositions fall. And we added to that current national market escalation and supply chain information, which are having a material effect on our business today. You'll also see in the report the concept of enabling projects. You can read the definition, but essentially these are projects that would have to be completed before a renovation project would take place. I'll give you some examples. Removal and replacement of the corroded domestic water piping system and all related work. In our professional opinion, it's not a piece of the system. It's not a part of the system. It is the entire system. Same goes for mechanical and electrical. Remedial repairs of concrete structure and masonry. Inefficient concession food service equipment, which I believe you own. Replacement of outdated light fixtures with LED. And for example, in the 2017 facility condition assessment report, we recommended the move to LED lighting. There's a number of reasons why that. They're energy efficient. They get a lot more hours out of the bulbs, all of that. And in our review here in 2022, what we found is about half of that work has been done. That means that the remaining half of that work goes into the calculation for enabling projects. Outdated light fixtures, LED, as I mentioned, and updating vertical transportation, elevators, and escalators. We also have a line item in the financial calculation called capital projects. This will be from 2026 to 2039. This is the monies that, under the current conditions of the lease, that Metro would have to apply to the stadium upkeep and maintenance through the end of the extended lease in 2039. So the financial calculation of our report is in front of you. Enabling projects, master plan construction, project contingency, which is based on today's current rates, the total project costs, and ongoing capital costs through the life of the extended lease. So the total imposition in terms of our analysis here is $2.1 billion. Now I want to dive back in to your questions about the comparable stadium review. Again, the set of stadiums to look at is 17 in the definition. Now, there are several stadiums, 2 Major League Baseball stadiums in particular, that are listed in the lease that no longer exist, and so that it is a bit of a dynamic. Situation. When we analyzed the work that had been done in the 17 facilities, really Hard Rock Stadium stood out, as I mentioned. It underwent similar renovation programs, and so it matched up nicely for us to have a comparative base. In our professional opinion, Hard Rock Stadium is the closest comparative example to test against the proposed components of the Titans master plan, which is what we did. So just an idea, what are some of those key components? Widen the concourses, the north and south sides, concessions, bars, lounges, fan amenities. That could be restrooms, that could be cashless, that could be many of the things that are the industry standard, the current industry standard today. Glass curtain walls, field clubs, sideline clubs, amenities throughout the building, up, top to bottom, left to right. Those components are also present, not in the exact same way, but they're also present in the Ginsler-Hastings plan. I wanted to add this as well, as when the renovations were completed in 2017 for Hard Rock Stadium, they weren't done. Meaning that immediately after their first season, they realized several things that just hadn't been addressed or contemplated in the renovation. So they made a decision during those renovations and the allocation of their dollars not really to focus on vertical transportations, escalators, and elevators. But as you might expect, as soon as the new building was completed from a renovation, the inefficiencies in those systems stood out and then had to be addressed immediately post-renovation. They added additional MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, where the systems that were designed in the renovation didn't quite carry the load for what was necessary in South Florida. And the example of field drainage, they did put a new field in the major renovation, but they speculated that they could survive the drainage system. And quite simply, they couldn't. What they found is that the other changes in the stadium, which included changes to the bowl, changes to the seating, changes to loge boxes, a wide variety of the elements that are, again, present in the Ginsler-Hastings plan, created a situation where they had to actually remove the new field, put an entirely new drainage system in, and then put the new field back. My reason for telling you this is that this is a dynamic situation. And you've seen it in your facilities that you own and operate before, and you will see it in the future. So it's a healthy reminder that anything that we look at today and our responsibilities as we go forward, there will be continued impositions in terms of what our responsibilities are under the lease as it's currently executed. So this is really my comparable stadium summary slide. We are, by any standard, a highly experienced group of industry experts. And I'd be honest with you, that term really makes me uncomfortable. Anybody that ever told me was an expert, I doubted right off the bat. But we bring significant institutional experience to this every single day. And a little different than maybe your average consultant. Up until February 24th of this year, I was the Senior Vice President of Operations and Campus and Facilities for SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park. Meaning not only do we run a consultancy, but we also embed and help organizations and communities and others figure out how to actually construct, manage, and operate these projects in the most beneficial way possible. So we are real folks that have our shoes on the ground, and we're not just trying to tell you something you want to hear. We are trying to express what we think is important for you to know. By that, we feel like that the work that we've done and the information that we've provided in that 99-page report as an independent assessment gives you a real handle on what the cost impositions would be in a renovation project under the terms of the current lease. So now I'm going to touch briefly on the facility condition assessment. As I mentioned earlier, a facility condition assessment is a benchmark in time and systems and equipment, architecture, that type of thing. This was focused on the 4-year period between right now and 2026. So our process, on-site review, our team members, not just the people who are here today, although they were all there, but also other members of their various disciplines, and the sub-consultants that I pointed out earlier. Several days on-site, in-depth, eyes-on observations, control systems, spent a great deal of time with the current staff of the stadium, visual inspection of the space. We reviewed the project drawings. We reviewed the work that had been done since the stadium had come online. We tried to identify the systems in these categories that we felt were most at risk. And we developed a 4-year capital plan to deal with the time period from now till 2026. Some of our findings in MEP and fire protection. The mechanical systems are original, and they are either at or beyond their expected usable life. Chilled water piping, cooling coils, significant buildup of scale. The picture that you see in front of you is an invasive test in the domestic water supply. Electrical systems are at or near, in some cases beyond, the end of their expected usable life. The emergency generators are 10 years old. They're in very good condition. The panel boards and transformers in the electrical system, they're at the end of their 25-year life, and that gives us a concern, and you'll see that in our recommendations. The LED sports lighting is added in 2019. It's in very good condition. The fire alarm devices and fire protection system is original, and it's another one of those systems that I think most likely would require complete reconstruction. And the regular full system flushing is required prior to events today because of the degradation in the domestic water supply. In structure, if any of you have been to the stadium, you have most likely seen a condition that resembles the picture on the screen. These are the stairways. So. The cast-in-place concrete steps, they're degrading rapidly. As I said, if you've been to the stadium for even a social function or something like that, it's highly likely that you've seen evidence of this type of corrosion in the stadium. The stadium right now, operations-wise, they're replacing 80 to 100 of these units per year. The main concourse slab above the loading dock and in some other areas has cracking and water damage. We do get cold. We have frost heave where water gets in, freezes, separates, oxidizes rebar, those kinds of conditions. These conditions are troublesome. The corrosion of the steel framing on the end zone video scoreboards is an issue that we think is serious. Overall, throughout this facility, caulking joints, expansion joints are showing signs of degradation and failure. The primary structural components, including the slabs, beams, and columns, are in generally good condition. So in the scenario that I outlined earlier, if a decision was made to go to renovation, then a term that you hear in the business is that the bones are good, so those bones are good. In technology, the first statement sort of stuns me. I've been in this business 40 years, and when I began in the business, the expected usable life of technology was probably 15 to 20 years. But in today's experience economy and how technology is changing, it almost feels like that these things are designed with some type of obsolescence in mind. But quite simply, the video boards are at the end of their life, even though they were installed in 2012. Signal processing for the bowl sound system is at the end of its expected usable life and in danger of failure. Now, this has implications to life safety in the bowl. So, and when we get to our recommendations, we'll give you some examples of progressive ways that we think that this could be addressed on your behalf. The distribution of the television system is the old coaxial system, not today's Category 7. Now, are there levels between the two? Certainly. The main point here is it cannot be relied upon. The TVs in the stadium, we found TVs that were 4 years old and 16 years old. The data infrastructure is generally up to current standards. Good news on data. Wireless access is in good condition. Again, good news. And the security systems have been continuously upgraded throughout the life of the facility so far, so they're in pretty good shape. Elevators and escalators, or this is elevators. There are 20 elevators, 8 original, and in 2012, 12 high-speed elevators were added to the project. The freight elevators were modernized, and in 2017, I think they're in pretty good shape. The original passenger elevators are at the end of their expected usable life. The high-speed elevators should be sufficiently reliable for the next 5 years. The access to the drivers and controllers in the original 8 elevators are an issue, and again, I'll address that in our recommendations. On the escalators, there were 4 original escalators. They are approaching the end of their life cycle period. The escalators are generally in good condition for their age, and we would be optimistic that with continued maintenance that they wouldn't be an issue over the course of the ensuing 4 years. But also, as we'll address with the elevators, the lack of available parts due to obsolescence could be an issue over that 4-year period as we go. And so our recommendations. Our recommendation is, and before the recommendations, what we calculated and what's in your report is approximately $37 million of financial vulnerability to Metro over the course of the next 4 years. But if you read those recommendations and that report, and what we're telling you now is we have tried to actually break down actions that we think you and the Titans could take in that 4-year period. So when I say $37 million, I'm not saying that Metro has to write a check for $37 million right now, because at the end of the day, it would be great if we didn't spend any of the $37 million. What's practical in this, from my standpoint, and the way that we manage facilities is, in the areas that have the highest risk and vulnerability, to take some action, particularly with obsolete parts, for example, to be able to get those parts while they're still available in the marketplace as a way to hedge against obsolescence and failure. So when you look at the number of the $37 million for the facility condition assessment, I want to reiterate, we are not talking about just, hey, you all need to go spend $37 million. What we need to do is apply the right amount of energy and attention to make sure that those systems last that 4-year period without any material cost consequences. But if the worst case scenario happened, then we think that's the universe of your potential costs. So, enhanced preventative maintenance system, what does that mean? That means you're paying attention to it now, pay more attention to the systems that we've listed that have high degree of vulnerability. Get additional eyes in there. Start to be thinking about continuity plans if that equipment or some of the pieces of that equipment failed. Where component obsolescence is occurring, drivers and controllers for elevators and escalators, access to scoreboard modules. Like, some of those are probably still available in some of the smaller non-professional buildings. They might not be in the same size and scale of your scoreboard, but those components may be available. They may be available on eBay. I mean, when obsolescence, what people in communities all over the U.S. are doing right now is trying to find ways to find parts to keep their current system serviceable rather than incur the responsibility of new capital expenditures. Replace the sound system signal processing. It's at the end of its life. I mentioned high failure risk. I hope you can imagine that I can't put words like that on paper lightly. I'm not Chicken Little. I work in facilities. I understand the consequences. So I will share with you that when we put this on paper, we're serious about the potential consequences in this area. And spare parts on electrical switchboards are now at the end of their usable life. Continue the program to replace the damaged aisle steps. A program to monitor concrete spalling, caulking, and expansion joints so that they don't get worse. And basically, continuity plan for electrical equipment, but a continuity plan for any of the areas that we have outlined where we think risk is, or failure is a material risk. And that concludes my formal presentation, and looking forward to any questions you'd have.
Thanks. Council members, I'm going to ask a series of questions first, and then I'm going to get y'all. And Mr. Simon, thank you so much for being here today. Obviously, with there being multi-billion-dollar numbers in here, there's going to be some questions, and we appreciate you bearing with us. I'm going to start by asking about the 2017 report. And in the overview of this 2017 report that you all issued, it said that as part of the assessment, VSG, in partnership with their consulting team, has developed a 20-year capital expense matrix to assist the owner in establishing priorities for major repairs, potential upgrades, and maintaining the facility in such a way to keep it competitive through, I think it was 2037 at the time, the next 20 years. So with the benefit of time, was your 2017 report accurate?
Yes,
And you all stand by that work?
absolutely.
And the cost at that point was going to be $293 million to keep the facility competitive for 20 years?
That's correct. We're talking about a facility condition assessment which focuses on the equipment and the systems of the building, but nothing in that report addresses NFL compliance, improvements to the facility, improvements to the amenities. It really is the actual operating systems of the building, the enclosure of the building, the basic structure of the building.
Why would you have all have said in the description of the report that that's the cost to keep it competitive for 20 years?
We were not actually opining on the competitive facilities set. We were opining on the facility condition assessment.
So that
The two are not related. The cost comparison to a conceptual master plan for major renovation for Nissan Stadium and a facility condition assessment are not they're not the same in any way.
All right, so in the report in 2017 where it said that was a 20-year cost to keep the facility competitive, that was not accurate?
It was accurate at the time. What happens from the moment we give that report, the information that we give in that report goes into a capital expense matrix. That capital expense matrix is a living tool that allows you as the owner information for capital planning. When do we need to replace seats? When do we need to improve HVAC and mechanical? When maybe we need to replace lights? It is a cost estimate guide based on the condition of the facility at that time.
In order to keep it competitive?
In order to keep it functioning.
Well, your report in 2017 said to keep it competitive.
It's impossible for me to sort of batter back and forth words. What I'm trying to explain is what a facility condition assessment is and what the basis of that report provides.
All right, so your report was incorrect when it said that was the cost to keep it competitive. So we'll believe in this report more, I guess. Let me ask you about your engagement letter, which I think is dated August 15, 2022, and it outlines an approach, task 2B, and in task 2B, it says VSG will also, there's a verb missing. VSG will also a high-level sample of the sample of improvement projects with order of magnitude cost for NFL, quote, comparable facility stadiums named in the Titans agreement, Carolina Panthers, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Cleveland Browns. I didn't see that in the report. Did you guys do that task 2B?
So what we did in 2B was look at the 17 facilities and the other named facilities that were in the comparable facilities set. Through looking at the work that was done in those facilities, we landed on the comparison to Hard Rock Stadium because it made the most sense in comparison to the Titans-Ginsler plan from a cost standpoint.
I'm guessing those other ones listed in your engagement letter, Carolina Panthers, the Jaguars, and the Browns, would have indicated a lower number?
We looked at all of the work that they have done in their through their usable life so far, but it did not serve as a foundation to be able to compare the Ginsler plan from a cost standpoint.
All right, and then, council members, I'm getting there. Thanks for bearing with me. In your work that we just got in the last week and a half or so, in the master plan design review, there was, I'll call a scope letter from Legend Project to you, and it includes the cost. This is number 3 in the assumptions. Cost to bring Nissan Stadium up to current NFL standards. And I saw on one of your slides, current NFL standards means for new built facilities, right?
Well, what we did is we compared Hard Rock, but also to the new build.
All right.
And here's what that means.
Can you go back to the slide where you say the new built is what you mean by current NFL standards?
That's it?
Yep, that's it.
Right. So if you're going to look at a renovation, you're not going to renovate to a standard that's lower than today. So, by examining Hard Rock, which was the single best example in the NFL of a similar type of renovation, and also understanding what the new built environment, let's take Allegiant Stadium as an example, what are the components in that environment? That actually is what creates what we'll call the current comparable facilities, the current industry standards.
That's fair enough. And I guess that goes to your point before that you're not making any determination about the cost with complying with the language in the lease. You're giving us the cost of what it takes to match the current NFL standards for new built stadiums.
We gave you a cost of what it would take to execute the Ginsler-Hastings plan.
And then the same thing in the Manhattan engagement letter dated October 20, 2022 from Mr. McClure over there to, I guess it was to Legends, Ms. Ports. There, the estimate that they worked on was included bringing it up to NFL standards, which by this slide means current for new built stadiums, and also providing, quote, new features to make the facility competitive for hosting major events and making it the go-to spot overlooking downtown Nashville. I assume you're not making any claim at all that last part about adding new features is required under the current lease, are you?
No, that language comes directly from the introduction at the Ginsler-Hastings plan, and so Manhattan took that as a piece of comparative language going forward, well intended, perhaps not exactly specific to our scope. But what I can tell you is there is nothing in the Ginsler-Hastings plan that is specific to competitive for other events for Nashville, meaning that there's not a piece of that plan and there's not a piece of what we priced that is not consistent with the current industry standard for an NFL facility.
And then one last question, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. The lease, Councilman Johnston mentioned the idea of the lease's concept of comparable facilities talks about a majority of comparable facilities as being the standard. And how do you mesh that standard in the lease, talking about a majority, things found in a majority of comparable facilities with the idea of just looking at one in your report?
Well, so in the process, we began with the competitive set of 17. No two facilities are the same. No two communities are the same. And the pace of improvements for these facilities are not the same. And so you could expect that there is a sort of a hodgepodge of work at a variety of different cost structures through all of the facilities in that 17 stadium set. It was determined that for us, in order for us to actually be able to give you comparable numbers that would be meaningful, that we would focus on the renovation that lined up most favorably with the proposed master plan design by the Titans.
And fair enough. And I guess lining up with the idea that you weren't you weren't giving us the cost of complying with the lease, there wasn't any effort to figure out the cost of meeting the standard in a majority of comparable facilities. It was just the renovation, most like the Gensler proposed renovation?
Yes, that was our focus.
All right, thanks. I saw Councilmember Johnston, then Parker, and then Sledge, Porterfield. Sorry, Councilmember Johnston, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the difference between the facilities assessment and a remodel, and I'm hoping that for the viewing audience, this analogy will sort of help put that into perspective. So when you purchase a home, I'm a real estate agent, so I'm going to give this analogy. When you purchase a home, you always get it inspected, right? So the inspector's going to go in and say, you got a leaky sink, you got a crack in your window, your gutters are failing, you need new gutters, you've got some light bulbs out that need to be replaced. It's very, very simple, and there's a cost associated with that. It's usually pretty low. Then when you come into your new home and you bring a contractor in because you want to blow out the kitchen, you want to put an addition on the back of it, you want a new master suite with a beautiful all this. That's a completely different type of cost associated, right? And so that's the difference between the facilities assessment and then the remodel that we're talking about based off of Gensler. So I hope that that's helpful. What I kind of want to know, what level of subjectivity, did you have when you were going through? Because we're talking about the Gensler plan, which is that's a conceptual design plan that was, it's very concrete. Then we're talking about Hard Rock. So was the Gensler plan based off of Hard Rock, or did you guys have any sort of subjectivity between comparing the two so that
It was, the Gensler plan, it has no relationship to what Hard Rock has actually put into the built product. In our analysis of what happened in the other 17 stadiums, it was clear that the Hard Rock Stadium plan most reflected a process that got that stadium to their current industry standard at that time, and it reflected the relationship to the Gensler plan. We looked at that, and then we looked at what was in the new built environment, and we found them to be comparable.
Okay. I think, my biggest concern about this, because I believe your numbers. I don't, obviously two groups came up with roughly the same number based off of two different ways of getting there, but got to the end result, the same end result. I think my concern, and I think a lot of my colleagues' concern, is the fact that we have a cost of a renovation that we don't necessarily, I know that nobody from Metro Legal, right, when we're talking about the lease and what we're obligated to in the lease, not your job. This is just a statement. It's not even directed at you, really. So we've got this cost, and we have no idea what's in the cost, what's a need, and what's a want, what we're obligated to, and what we want to be nice and shiny and cool. And so I think that's where the breakdown is. And so I have asked, and I think some other people have asked too, of this 1.8 whatever, almost $9 billion for this, and wouldn't be you, it would be someone else from either Metro Legal or the Sports Authority or somebody that's interpreting the lease very, very specifically. Comparable facilities, first-class facility, the majority of comparable facilities, all of those things to say, these are the bullet points that are required in the lease. These are things extra, but when you pull out the extra, what is the cost of what we were actually contractually obligated to based off of the lease? Again, not directed at you because you did what you were asked to do. But I don't understand why we had no input into this. Nobody from Metro doesn't even have this design concept that we paid to have quoted out. I don't understand how that happens. Nobody from the Sports Authority has the design concept. So we don't even know what this is. Again, I think you did a great job, and those numbers are probably spot on. But I think that's our hesitancy and our concern is, well, but what needs versus wants, right? So again, that wasn't a question, and it's, again, not directed at you.
Understood.
Thank you. I've got Parker, Sledge, Porterfield, O'Connell. So Parker's next.
Hey, and thank you for being here to help explain the report that we got. I had a few questions. In your executive summary, under mechanical, so I drive a very old car, and, I take very meticulous care of it. I'm very familiar with the recommended service intervals, everything that should be done to the car. I do everything I can to do all that, but there are things that I deviate from for various reasons, for cost savings, et cetera, and I try to be very thoughtful about which things I do and which things I don't do. Kind of a recurring theme of both the 2017 report and this new report is maintenance that could help prevent things from getting bad enough that it becomes a capital expense. And one thing I noted about y'all's review of maintenance practices was it said on page 36 regarding mechanical service records were not provided for review and incorporated into the assessment. So I think that was about HVAC specifically. Did you guys request those service records?
Yes.
And they were not provided?
Most of their preventive maintenance is done by a third party. Almost all of their.
Oh, try now.
Most of their maintenance is provided by a third-party service.
Sure, but I mean,
And so that's why it wasn't available to us at the time. It was with whoever their mechanical provider who provides the PM. So they didn't have it at the time, so.
Okay, so those records presumably do exist, and you couldn't get them in time?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. And so you made recommendations about, specific kinds of maintenance, things that should be looked at closer to keep certain aging things. I think I read in the report, it was like we retire one half of the elevators and take the spare parts to keep the other side running for longer, or have spares on hand for that. I like that kind of stuff. Did you provide a specific schedule of maintenance recommendations to the team? Because they're the ones in the building.
We provided the concept, but not direction to execute.
Okay.
In much the same ways here, when I talked about my recommendations for the facility condition assessment, we are providing the concept that we recommend that you be thinking about a plan that in these areas that are vulnerable today, what moves could you make today to ensure if the unfortunate situation were failure to occur, that you weren't paralyzed by our current economic issues, by our current the supply chain issues, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two categories of maintenance that I'm talking about here, and there's the sort of forward-thinking, looking at making sure we have spares and whatnot, which I think is what you're talking about now. And then there's things, I don't have a specific example, but I recall things in both 2017 and the 2022 reports where it's like the fluid levels were like way off on this, like something that just, really should be kept up in order for this stuff to get to its full service life and not become a capital expense. I just, you're giving us these great ideas, but we're not responsible for maintenance. That's their responsibility. And so I'm hoping that maybe you can provide them with some ideas about maintenance.
So in our professional practice, the real benefit to what we bring forward is to shine a spotlight on those items, and they can be as diverse as the categories in the report that, thank you for reading, by the way. But no, we don't actually direct the owner or the manager or the operator into specific solutions.
Okay. Well, I hope that the team folks are taking that stuff to heart. So, again, I understand there's been a lot of discussion about what was the scope of your assignment, and I'm still not quite sure how we arrived at, looking at this Titans Gensler master plan instead of the lease and the terms that are defined in the lease as sort of our starting point, but that's where we landed. But, I do want to point out for the viewing audience that there are some, I haven't seen the private or secret plan for renovation, but there are some hints about it in this document. I think the language that Councilmember Mendez pointed out about, creating a competitive facility for major events, becoming the go-to spot overlooking downtown, I think that gives you a sense of where their preferred renovation scenario is going. There's the South Event Plaza, which there is a rendering of in this new 22 report, which, I mean, those are all super cool things. I'm sure that'd be a great place to hang out, go see a concert, but none of which is contemplated in the lease. I mean, we are not on the hook for that stuff. I mean, somebody can write a legal analysis or opinion that would convince me otherwise, but I've read that lease a lot. I'm not a lawyer, but I have high reading comprehension, and that stuff is not in the lease. So I just wanted to be clear that that was, there's some hints about that plan in here, but we still haven't seen it, and I think it's above and beyond whatever Metro is actually obligated to do.
Anything else, Councilmember?
Thank you. No, that's it.
Councilmember Sledge.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. Could we get back to this slide that has the $1.3 billion cost of renovations over time at Hard Rock? It was very early in the presentation. Yeah, right there. Okay, so total renovation cost 2006 to 2017, total $1.3 billion.
It was two major renovations. One that was done in 93, from 93 to 2017. So there were two pieces that created the aggregate value.
Does that include what they underwent from 2017 to 2020?
The items that I used, the items I described here, the items that I described that were done after the renovations, the field drainage system, for example, additional MEP, escalators and elevators, those costs are not contemplated in what we provided you.
So the cost that I see from when they held their latest Super Bowl a couple years ago was they had undergone a 3-year renovation, and they had done it at $755 million in those dollars, meaning about, I don't know, $850, $860 in today's dollars. That renovation you're saying is not what's contemplated in this comparison. Is that accurate?
Renovation is contemplated in this number.
So that's part of the $1.3 billion.
The major renovation projects that have taken place on Hard Rock Stadium are contemplated in the, contemplated in the $1.3 million. And again, that's corrected for 2023 dollars.
Got it. So let's call it 860. So 860 of that 1.3 billion was to make it what we know with
the 2017 Super Bowl renovation.
Right. Yes, it's what we know today. So previously, like you mentioned, in 1987, and for those of us who grew up watching Dan Marino for Joe Robbie Stadium, so those what was undertaken. So this is a stadium that's built about 12 years before what we call Adelphia Coliseum was constructed. So I want to talk a little bit about keeping that in mind versus what some of the other comparable facilities are, because what's interesting from what I've been going back and reading through is these seem to come league-wide waves. And so when we saw improvements to seats in what's now Nissan Stadium in 2015 or so, other stadiums of its age were getting similar upgrades, whether it was screen or seats or whatever it might be. So could you talk to a little bit? So interestingly now, several stadiums that are of this same age are having this exact same conversation.
Yes, sir.
Right? So one of the ones I've gone through some of those comparable ones, right? So Jacksonville, Charlotte, Cleveland, just publicly with the numbers that people are out there talking about. Jacksonville, the numbers range from $600 to $800 million for renovation, up to $1 billion from what I've seen publicly. That stadium's 1995. 1996, Charlotte. Charlotte's owner has been a little cagier on his numbers, but there's been the $1 billion number thrown out. 1999, the same year that our stadium was built in Cleveland, the Haslams have been talking with a renovation number that starts at $500 million. The $1 billion number has been thrown out. 2000, what was Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati, Gensler actually is doing a report on this right now. They have their basic repairs at $500 million, and then are supposed to come back with what you could do to make it super nice, super special.
That's about another $490 million.
Could you say that? I can't hear you from the mic.
Can you speak? That's about another $490 million.
Okay, so that's $1 billion total, right? Okay. So, and then in New England, what I'm seeing now is the Crafts putting in $225 million. They've put in $300 million in what they called the past 20 years. So I put inflation based on 20 years ago. That total number I've gotten about $750 million. And then Baltimore Stadium, which was opened a year before ours, the number they're talking about for renovation is $1.2 billion. And then I had the pleasure of visiting Denver a few months ago and standing right outside Mile High, where they had their renovations 10 years ago. In today's dollar, their renovation was $510 million, and they have a comparably sized stadium. They have a few extra. That was built in 2001. So I guess my thought is there's like a half dozen markets right now who are having the exact same conversation, a renovation, with stadiums that are almost exactly the same age, within just a few years of each other, and typically just a slight bit older. So my question to you is, when we see those numbers and they're all kind of trending in the same direction, they're about $800 million, the billion-dollar numbers thrown out, $1.2 billion. I've read through the study, and is our stadium built that poorly that it's at 1.8? Because I see the pictures that you show, and I just wonder, you're saying more or less we got to strip this thing down to the studs to get it right. So is it done that badly?
So I'm not going to be comfortable with done poorly or done badly, but the original cost of this stadium was on the low side of the stadiums that you've just mentioned. And each organization, each community, each responsible entity handles their facilities differently. I wish there was a mean or a median, but just the research that you've done, that you've outlined here, shows that that's not the case. There's a great deal of diversity amongst those facilities. There are other facilities. There was a rash of stadiums that came on. You didn't mention Raymond James. You didn't mention Pittsburgh.
Raymond James was Baltimore. That's one point.
No, Raymond James is Tampa Bay.
Oh, well,
So there are other facilities that are in that set. It was a rash of stadiums during that period, and you're correct. Communities like ours are having this conversation in real time today.
So I guess to my point, though, most of these are having a conversation about renovation. That's the first thing I want to point out. And so the second thing that I want to point out is, the oldest stadium. It seems to me that there's two, even though you're saying, and I understand why you're saying it, about a renovation or an effort to get a stadium to first class or to whatever you call comparable facility that any team would be undertaking would be to get it to that first class standard, right? Like, and I'm not saying lease terms first class. I'm just saying, like, in our minds, first class.
Prepared to actually conduct their business for 20 years in the future.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
And so all these cities are undertaking, all these markets are undertaking that conversation at the same time. And I will push back a little bit. I do think there's a median there. The numbers there you're looking at 800 to a billion to 1.2. So I'd say a billion probably is that median, right? So it seems to me that all these markets are having this conversation at the same time, and we would do well, I think, to think about that. Where I see us having this conversation is we're having the super duper world-class stadium conversation that the Dallas or the Las Vegas or the Los Angeles of the world is having. And if we're going to have that conversation, I think it's perfectly fine to have that conversation. But I do think there's a distinction there. And in this presentation, I don't know that it's making that distinction. Does that make sense?
I believe I'm following your thought process. Yes.
So would you say that this study, from everything that you've put together and the number, can we go to the full just math where it's at the 2.1? Thank you. So when you come to this cost review, would you say that this project cost is to have a stadium, the 1.9, I'm gonna call it 1.9, the 1.9 million stadium is to have the first class stadium or the super duper world class stadium?
Having worked on the super duper stadium, this is not reflective of a super duper stadium. Right off the bat, your $256 million worth of enabling projects has a material effect on the total budget. And in some of the cases, and it's only been sort of mentioned sort of sort of quietly, but several of the buildings that you've just outlined in your very comprehensive review are now starting the cadence of conversation about replacement buildings. The renovation process that they've gone through is starting to lead them towards a different potential solution for their community.
So I think what I'm hearing you say when you say that is your opinion is that some of these markets that are having renovation conversations now are going to soon be having replacement
I
conversations.
do expect that they will translate into replacement stadium conversations, yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you, Chair. My questions were already answered.
All right. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one, I guess, is just I think this will probably be a question for the administration that's relevant today. So the Chair's FY23 budget that was approved included funding for this study. Can we please get a copy of the scope of that work? And Mr. Chair, I'm happy to submit that to the council office, but I think that would be helpful to understand what was actually asked for.
Yeah, we've got the engagement letter. If it's not on the website, I'll make sure it's up on the website tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think following up on Councilmember Sledge's point, and respectfully, Councilmember, some of us grew up watching Mark Rippon, but that's a different conversation. So how long should an NFL stadium last?
Industry-wide, up until recent times, we would generally equate the bond life with the expected usable life of a stadium or an arena.
So I guess what I'm hearing you say there is
years.
we're falling, how, say that?
30 years.
Okay, so we're coming up short.
Yes.
Okay. So then, revisiting Councilmember Mendez, your 2017 report included the capital matrix you indicated as a living document. Is that document still alive? Was it ever updated?
Mike, do you know the answer?
We were never asked.
Mike, you got to speak into the microphone.
We were never asked to update it. Typically, once we hand it off, we encourage the client that, once a year they need to look at it and make sure it's prioritized correctly based on funding priorities and making sure that cost escalation is where it needs to be. And absent of that, sometimes we get a call from our clients to say, can you help us with that? But most of the time, they carry that forward.
Okay. I guess then that might be a question for beyond the parties in this room. What I'm hearing is we don't know if that was updated, but we assume it probably was not.
Actually, I can't make that assumption. We do not know.
Okay. We don't know whether that was updated. Following up on that then, I think what I heard was in understanding that in the time elapsed since the 2017 report, which you stand by, you've concluded 5 years later that the stadium that at that time could be meaningfully renovated for a much lower cost can no longer be meaningfully renovated.
We did not contemplate the question of renovation in a facility condition assessment.
Okay. And then following up on Councilmember Parker's question, who is legally responsible for maintenance? That might be an administration question or Metro Legal.
They're required to do ongoing maintenance, but obviously some things turn into capital repairs over time.
Okay, and I guess, yeah, I guess there's a lot of space for what should have happened here, but I guess maybe I would ask then, would Metro payments over the 5 years between the 2017 report?
Councilman, let's focus on questions for VSG.
Okay, that's fair. All right, well, here, my last one is, you all have clearly seen the Gensler-Hastings plan. We have not. As a Metro vendor, are you prohibited from sharing that?
I am.
Okay, I think that's important to know. Thank you.
And Councilmember Johnston.
Thank you. I just had one more follow-up. So we've been explained about enabling projects, which makes sense to me. We obviously know what master plan construction means. The contingency, I get that. Can you explain what soft costs are? Because that's nearly $500 million.
So we consider soft costs architectural, engineering, design consultants, special inspections to make sure the work is being conducted properly, permitting, insurance, all those types of costs that are above and beyond what you might pay your contractor direct, hard, physical construction dollars for.
So it represents about half of the master plan construction. Is that a reasonable percentage for soft costs?
Typically, we added for technology, so there's a big chunk of technology that we held in soft costs and not in direct construction. So typically, we're anywhere from 30 to 40%, usually about 30 with contingencies. This one, because we held the technology into the soft costs, it's a little bit higher.
Would it be more appropriate to put the technology into the master plan construction? Because you're not going to get the construction right without the technology.
Sometimes we do that with other vendors and the direct contractors. So we held it in soft costs because you could buy it directly and save dollars from your contractor. So
You would save general conditions and other cost implications by funneling it through.
So maybe it should be a separate bullet point then, is my point. That would maybe be helpful because that looks alarmingly high.
And in FF&E, furniture and some fixtures are also in that soft cost, but
That would be helpful to pull that out as well. Okay, thanks.
Is that broken out in the report? Yeah, in the report itself, there are several sheets that actually show those breakouts.
Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question or questions are, I'm struggling with when I have to talk to a constituent, similar to the real estate example that Councilmember Johnston gave. When it comes to an appraisal and you're trying to sell your house, you can have an appraisal on the low end or you can have it on the high end. So what would I tell my constituents in terms of this reporting, because it does seem like it's more on the high end because it is going to feed in what it is that's being asked of us to do?
So the benefit you have is in the actual physical report itself. Each one of these items is specifically detailed in the facility condition assessment. Essentially, we don't have an opinion about whether it should be low or high. We're Switzerland in all of this. Basically, in each one of those pieces of the report, you can see the specific equipment, you can see the comments about the equipment, you can see the estimated the costs that are associated with that equipment. So I would hope that you would find those to be accurate.
Okay. So also the equipment that is there any equipment that can be transferable to the new stadium, considering that we just bought lights in 2019? I don't know what the life cycle is for the LED lights, but are there any things that could be transferable to the new stadium that may help save costs?
It's a fair question, and we get asked it a good deal. There are many examples where certain more recent digital pieces of digital technology can be used in a secondary application in a new facility from the older facility. But in general, I would have to share with you in my industry experience, there's very little in the old building that would make its way into the new building.
Okay, my last question is about the, this is a beautiful plan, and we've paid top dollar for it. How can we be, I know it's no guarantee, but for us not to be 2 years into this new stadium, and now we've got another $50 million worth of maintenance or renovations or things that we need to do if we done that, because it seems historic for Nashville to build edifices, and in 5 years it's almost like they are antiquated, or by the time they get them up they're already outdated. So how do we have a guarantee that this is going to last us a decent amount of time?
So I'm going to answer your question as a citizen, and my understanding of the deal points for the new stadium, that you have specifically requested independent third-party review of the condition of the facility on a regular basis. that would help to assure me that the building was being maintained to the highest possible standard and therefore creating the longest possible expected usable life of its equipment and its systems as a citizen.
All right, I've got Councilmember Allen, then Suara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. I'm a numbers person, and it definitely helps me to get all these numbers laid out. And having done facility assessment on MEP stuff, I appreciate the detail of that and feel like at least that piece of it, it feels like it's in the right range. So that sort of gives me confidence in the rest of the numbers on the enabling projects. So I appreciate that. What I think I hear many of us asking for is ultimately we will have to make a very complicated decision, and we want to know that we're comparing apples to oranges, I think, because we want to know what it would cost just to do the bare minimum, and then we're comparing that with the gold standard. And I guess what I'm asking is if someone, maybe our finance director, I'm not sure, could help us see both the comparison of the two nice fancy options as well as the bare bones, if all we do is just get through this lease and then walk away. And I don't know that we've made the decision that we don't want football anymore, but it feels like that's a question that's being asked. If all we do is just
I'd like to
finish our obligations, can that be provided? And I don't know if that's part of yours or a further follow-up on this.
Let's get through questions for VSG, and then we've got plenty of time to talk to the administration about stuff. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. My question is not too far from that, but in a different way. Because when I'm looking at doing an analysis and talking about industry standards, I would like to be able to see what the industry actually says. But it appears as if what we're comparing to, what we're working with, is this Gensler Easton plans, is what we're actually doing for our comparison. So is there any way we can find out what the industry or NFL standard is for stadium? Like, if you want to have a stadium, this is what it should have, this is what we should have. And that could be a basis for us to be able to go back and do the work or answer some of the questions that some of us have been asking.
There are basic NFL standards, the minimum things that you would need to do, and the minimum capabilities of a building to be able to host guests, to be able to provide broadcasts, to be able to meet codes and that type of thing. But I don't believe that there's a comprehensive document that just says, here's your booklet, go build that, have a good day. I don't think that exists. So you and people that are in the position you are in, you rely on professionals like ourselves to provide the best information that we're capable of providing.
Am I allowed to follow up?
Sure.
And so, after having said that, are you able to, and I guess maybe you will have to be contracted to do that, to now take that basic NFL standards and give us what that cost will be?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I just don't, because I just don't believe I can answer that question today. I'm sorry. Thank you, though.
Y'all have any other questions for BSG? Going once, twice? All right. We can be done with VSG, and then if you want to talk to us to tell us what his presentation means, that's fine. Thank you very much for coming today, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much. ahead, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, and I won't bore you by reading directly from the lease unless someone would like me to do so, but it does require that the facility be kept in first-class condition, and one of the measures is that the facility have improvements to be found at a reasonable number of comparable facilities. Quite a few of them are no longer in service, but the scope of work requires you to make some sort of a judgment about what improvements exist at other comparable facilities. And I was actually hoping you could correct me in case I went astray here, but the Hard Rock Stadium was selected in part because it has a certain number of improvements that would appear to make it comply with language similar to what's in our lease. And I believe the Gensler report was chosen as a benchmark for that effort because it also sets forth a number of these improvements that are found at Hard Rock and at other comparable facilities. So there was some confusion on that. Happy to try to answer questions about it. But it wasn't as much of a miss as it might appear.
I don't think there was confusion. I think he was pretty clear. Can we get a copy of the Gensler report?
I've been told it's proprietary. We might be able to get a summary of the things that it includes.
So hold on a second. I gotcha. I mean, fundamentally, he said clearly, unequivocally, that his scope did not involve giving us the cost of complying with the lease, right?
I took that as some confusion about your question and what he was asked to do. The scope was for evaluating the lease, comparable facilities.
Tom, I asked him 5 times. He said directly that I read him the words that were on his slide, and he said, no, that wasn't my scope. He continued to deflect each time to my scope was to figure out the cost of building whatever's in the Gensler report.
And what's in the Gensler report is
You've never seen?
I've not seen it, but he's a well-qualified guy. And he has represented to us that it includes things that constitute improvements that other NFL facilities have.
I mean, the administration spokesperson said to the Business Journal in June, and I quote, "But as we continue our due diligence on the Titans' cost estimates, and after hearing from Councilmember Sean Parker, we believe it's appropriate to initiate our own analysis of Nashville taxpayer obligations under the current lease." And then he just said that that's not what his job was. And you've never even seen the Gensler report, and nobody else has seen the Gensler report. And that was the biggest piece of what he did, was to tell us the cost of building whatever's in the Gensler report that he has seen.
Again, and I don't want to belabor this, but they reviewed a number of other facilities focusing on Hard Rock because it has some improvements that you might expect to see in a renovation meeting the terms of the lease. And what has been represented to us is the Gensler report also has similar improvements, so it made a good benchmark for costing.
So, I mean, you brought up the lease. It says that we're supposed to build to the standard of a majority of comparable facilities, and somehow that's being bootstrapped to a single facility.
Actually, there are 2 clauses. One of them speaks to a majority of facilities. The one that's operative here says a reasonable number of facilities. And it's tricky to do because a number of the facilities that were specifically called out aren't in operation anymore.
So that's your legal position on behalf of Metro, is that clause is interpreted as a single facility?
It would be ideal if we had a number of others, but I think what he said was he's reviewed several other facilities to determine what kinds of improvements you might expect to see at a modern NFL facility.
You brought this on yourself for whatever happens next. I think it's O'Connell, and then Parker, and then Porterfield, and then Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think to the point that was just raised, we have to be very careful for any agent of Metro to assert anything about the Gensler report at this point. We don't know what the Gensler report says, so I think if we're going to sit here with Metro Legal telling us that the Gensler-Hastings report suggests X, Y, or Z as an assertion, I just don't think that's appropriate. I think, I know you corrected your language to say it is warranted to us that, that's okay. I guess we can start there, but I guess I'll follow up and say, is it Metro Legal's position that we're going to, conduct this entire conversation with the entirety of our understanding of the numbers being, hey, a vendor we paid did a study that says this, and we're going to just take that without ever attempting to see it?
We can try to get some clarification, and it might be good to have a summary of the specific improvements that it speaks to, and the ones in Joe Robbie.
I would contend that it would be great to get the Gensler-Hastings report.
I don't disagree with you. I'm not sure that will be made available to us.
Have you asked?
I know they provided it to Mr. Simons.
This is a yes or no question. Have you asked?
As far as I know, nobody in Metro's asked for it.
Oh, I'd strongly suggest we do that.
Who did I say was second? Parker's next.
Thank you. And Mr. Cross, just to kind of follow up on the, do we have confidence? I mean, we can't see it, so we really can't know, but do we have confidence that there's alignment between the Gensler master plan and Metro's minimum obligations under the lease? I mean, it's not speculation to say that plan includes, because there's details about it in our report here, that includes a new event venue being constructed on the south side of the facility. It looks like a concert venue type place. I mean, there's no read of the lease that would obligate Metro to build a new concert venue on the south side of the facility.
I agree with that. I don't think that you could say reasonably that a reasonable number of comparable facilities have that specific thing, but they have improvements that our stadium does not, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of like there's a lot of room there where things could land, right? And so if we're being asked to deliberate on a major financial decision for the city based on sort of one side's, I mean, has any like at any point has anyone in Metro looked at this thing and said, okay, we think that's reasonable, that's not reasonable to the standards that are defined in the lease for the Gensler?
The VSG folks looked at several comparable facilities and focused on Hard Rock because it, I'm told, has the kinds of improvements you would expect to see in these facilities league-wide. And they related the Gensler report to that, saying it also has a number of those same improvements.
Thanks.
So it's easier to cost.
So, Chair, I mean, with what we have before us, I mean, I don't know that we're going to get a satisfactory answer about Metro's minimum obligations. So, I mean, the best that we might be able to do is take these line item estimates that the contractors provided in this report and just start crossing things out that we don't think is within the scope of the lease. That's the best I think we're able to do with the information that we've been presented. I'll take a stab at it.
I mean, send me over your professional engineer license. I got a few other people.
If we can hear from the Titans or one of their representatives
when we get through council members. And listen, the guy was clear and unequivocal, and I don't blame the administration and the team for wanting to readjust the conversation afterwards. So we're going to give him a chance to readjust the whole thing. Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you, Chair. I am, I don't know the word that I want to use. I'm a bit, maybe the word is confused, befuddled, flabbergasted, gaslit, frustrated. I don't know. It's a ton of different words I'm feeling right now. But what I don't understand is how we go from a reasonable amount of facilities, a majority of facilities, to focusing on one facility. If there are 17 stadiums that are considered comparable, I don't understand why the scope was focused on on the one facility that most closely aligns with the Gensler-Hastings plan, as opposed to a study that evaluated what our obligations were in the lease. Like, this does not provide me with the information that I need to make a sound decision on something that's going to have a huge fiscal impact on our city for generations. Like, this isn't a one-year budget item. This is an item that's going to have long-term implications. Why do we not have the information that we need to make a financially and fiscally responsible decision? Why are we not being given the information that we need? Why do we not know what the lease is saying we are obligated to do? Why do we have a study that is comparing this to what the dream item is? We're not looking at the dream item. We are asking, what is the lease telling us that we need to do? How do we get that information, Chair? Because clearly we were not provided that today. And clearly this study that we just paid for did not give us that.
I would ask you to submit that for part of the weekly questions, and they can give us they can have time to give us a thought-out response to that. I think that's a fair question to ask. I had Johnston and then Hurt.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's a little bit of a recurring theme. I'm assuming that when you say the Gensler report is proprietary, that this is owned by the Titans. Is that fair to say?
I do not know for sure. I assume so. I assume they have the right to do with it what they want, but I don't know. It was just, I was told that it was proprietary.
Okay. So I would think that any reasonable person, and I've talked with the Titans myself, and I think they're decently reasonable. I think it's a reasonable request that since we paid almost $250,000 to have a cost assessment done based off of this secret design or proprietary design, it only makes sense that we could see the design that we have paid to be estimated. And I don't know that anybody is going to feel real comfortable with a $1.9 billion cost when we don't even know what we're paying for. We don't even know what all is in there. And you can bullet point things all you want to, but I think it's going to be imperative that that design is shown. And I can guarantee you that there's going to be some things, Councilman or somebody, I think you pointed out the event venue thing, but so there's going to be bullet points within that design that are over and above the requirement of our lease. There's no question about it. And so those things can be taken out, and we can have a revised cost estimate of a remodel or a renovation that we are obligated to within the lease. And I don't think that there's any risk in that. If the ultimate goal, if everybody just wants this new stadium, you could bring that $1.9 billion way, way down, and you're still not going to get to a point that it doesn't make sense to build the new building, because you lose a huge revenue source in the hotel occupancy tax. You have sales tax revenues that don't go away, but they're certainly compromised because of the lack of the ability to develop that 130 acres based off of the current lease. And the in-stadium sales tax is going to be minimized as well because it's exposed to the elements and it looks not so great. It's not covered. I mean, obviously we would renovate it. So I just think whoever is talking to them, I'm sure the Titans are watching this now, or I just think it is really imperative for them to share this design. And if they had no intention of sharing the design, we shouldn't have spent the money to have this cost estimate done. And I don't understand, and I said it a little bit before, I don't understand how we allocated these dollars. This body would have never approved a $200,000 allocation to get a cost estimate on a design that we can't even see. Never in a million years. There's not one of us in here. All 39 of us would say, you got to be crazy. So the fact that that was pulled that was a little bit of a trick show done makes me mad, number one. But also it just speaks to how this whole process has really sort of been done backwards, and in the name of transparency has not been transparent at all.
Councilmember Hurt.
Chair. Basically, I was going to say that I found the Titans to be more transparent, and perhaps maybe someone that's representing them or someone from the Titans might be able to speak to this and provide us with some more information.
So I've very specifically, in terms of this committee, the Titans and the administration get to control the presentations for nearly every meeting we have. And so when it's not their turn to present it, I've wanted to keep it to be what the committee wants to hear from.
Oh, I'm just wondering if they could provide us with a document from Gensler, since they are the ones that I think have it.
And in this instance, I'm happy if the narrow question is to the team about whether they'll provide the report. I'm happy to let that happen. I just don't want every single meeting. The Titans have already got plenty of airtime.
Oh, yeah, that's basically my question is, could the Titans provide the document?
Yeah, let me try to find the right button for the back. Is that public table? Is that what it's called? Yes, sir. So the question, Mr. Weaver. Oh, hold on. Apparently that's not the right button. Somebody who's smart. Councilman Parker. Which one is it?
Okay.
That one.
Try again. Just come up to Councilman Rutherford's right there. Yeah. Yeah.
This one.
Yep.
James Weaver, Waller, Lanston, represent the Titans. We're, of course, happy to share the Gensler master plan with council. We'll do so tonight or tomorrow. We were asked to provide it to the consultant, and we did. And that's who we've been asked to provide it to. We haven't been asked to provide it to anyone else. It became relevant when the consultants started their work. We're obviously want to be completely transparent, happy to share it, happy to have it reviewed. I think it will help answer some of your questions, but I'm not here to advocate. I'm just here to tell you there's no hiding the ball. It is a document that our client hired the firms to do, but we're happy to share it, given that the consultant has relied on it, and happy to answer questions on it at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Let me just ask you one follow-up on that. So nobody associated with the Metropolitan government has ever asked for that before until right now?
Not exactly sure that I can answer that question. I can tell you that it's relevant to what the work that the consultant was doing. And so I think it was assumed all along that it was going to go to the consultant, because we started talking about, the council started talking about the consultant at the very beginning of this, so it was assumed that it was going to be given to the consultant, and it was part of the request that the consultant made of the client for documents, and we, of course, were happy to turn it over. So I'm not going to really participate in any kind of sort of got you game on that. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to say the consultant asked for the document, and we gave it to the consultant. Also want to apologize for how I'm dressed. I didn't know I was going to be standing on this side of the rail.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be short because I'm not a member of the committee. I'm a little concerned hearing this discussion that we're looking for a magic number that may not be one that can be provided or calculated, because whatever that minimum is needed to comply with our lease is always going to be a bit of a debatable number, because I want a little different countertop than you, or I want stainless steel instead of something else in this great big remodel. So I'm not sure we're going to get there. And then I've also, I'm a simple guy. At the end of the day, I think we've almost taken this discussion backwards. I think it might be easier if we look at the deal that's being offered for the new stadium and decide if that's really a good deal. Is the funding going to be there? Are we going to relieve the taxpayers of some of the ongoing expenses of our current stadium?
What ongoing expenses? If you don't know what the ongoing expense, if you don't know the current obligation, what are you relieving the taxpayers of?
Well, we know that $1 million a year goes to the capital funding. We know that $4 million a year from the pilot goes into construction. And then there's guesses, whatever might have to be repaired as far as, and again, I don't mind getting a figure, but I don't know that you'll ever get the magic number. And then, again, if we have some idea of whether or not it's a good deal, we may decide, it's not a good deal or it is a good deal. And then all this discussion about the remodel kind of goes away if we decide that, this is a pretty good deal. Just a thought.
I appreciate it. My perspective is, if it was my house and I was trying to decide whether to remodel or tear it down, I have to know the remodel cost. And, from the public statements of the administration, I think a lot of us thought we were like, that's what we asked for and that's what we were going to get. But I hear you. All right, so any more questions? Anybody? Comments, discussion? Councilmember Roten.
One comment. We know we have a number of $300 million from 2017 or something like that. We know it's somewhere between $300 million and $1.8 billion. We know how much we're going to be spending on the new stadium. The sales tax portion, 2/3 of that state money. It's not even our money. So I don't know why we're sitting here arguing over whether it's $1 billion or $1.4 billion or $700 million. It's more than what we're going to be paying on the sales tax. And we're getting all that money back on general obligation bonds. So it's a very strange, we're sitting here arguing over some crazy stuff now. Thanks.
Respectfully, council member, that is not clear from the term sheet at all. All right, we got a meeting on the 9th, 2 days, and that will be, the team will be presenting about stadium design, and the planning department will be giving us an update about East Bank planning, and there will also be a discussion about the resolution for issuing an RFQ for a development partner. The scope of that RFQ will be under discussion on Wednesday also. So everybody go out and vote.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.